financially more feasible for the town to have our good people that are on these boards and commissions do their job and provide the underlying policy decisions, and then have someone whose job it is to create those documents for us. And then we review them and go through a process like this, and hopefully it all works.
Thank you.
Anybody else? New speaker? Paul.
I had another question, but Mr. Nichols interrupted me. I didn't get an answer back on one topic that I think is probably the most important in my letter. And that's more directed at Wilbur, but it's not necessarily his problem. I think it's the select board's problem. In my letter, I noted that there's a conflict between the town, there's a conflict in the zoning ordinance. And it followed the path, the zoning ordinance adopted less than 6 months ago or revised, notes that anybody that owns a property in the aquifer protection overlay areas is required to attach their wastewater to the municipal sewer system. And so if you own a property in that overlay district, you have no ability to develop your property. If you were to have a failed system, interestingly enough, not only was there a failed system, but there is a person in the APO zone, subzone A, that not only replaced their system, but they built a whole new house and put a new system in, which is in violation of the town zoning ordinance. I don't know how that got through. I question some of those quite often, but in this one in particular is less than 200, 300 feet from our town's water supply. So I asked the select board, sort of in relationship to this sewer service area thing, how do you plan to address the fact that the zoning ordinance was adopted and revised no less than 3 or 4 times since the town plan was adopted in 17, with a priority to have a sewer main through the subzone A and B and not actually happen? And now the zoning ordinance followed with the anticipation, I think, of that happening. We all now, as landowners on Carlin Street, Cass Terrace, Airport Road, Richville Road, are limited from developing anything for 8 years now. And in that question, and I don't think the select board wrote this or the zoning board or planning commission, but BCRC wrote, quote, the town 2025 town plan now remove, they wrote in the expansion of the sewer main on Main Street was a priority for which, quote, will lower barriers to denser residential development adjacent to downtown, unquote, as opposed to protecting the town's domestic water supply. And so I think it's an important piece of the puzzle to address it. We have this opportunity. The zoning doesn't comply with the town plan. Everybody that owns property in that area can't actually do anything with it. And it seems to be 8 years ago that we made a priority, but we now have a sewer main that goes up Main Street. I don't know what that cost, but it seems like it's the same distance as Richville Road. So I just, if nothing else, maybe that can be addressed through this process, because we as property owners on Richville Road seem to have a conundrum.
Well, I hope you take some confidence from the fact that our planning commission chair just said that he feels it's the #1 priority for the town. I'm sure that will be helpful in redirecting the ordinances. I think it gets a little bit complicated as far as what actually happens there. It's not the select board, but it's the same people as the board of sewer commissioners. It'll ultimately make that decision as to how that works. And then it gets even further complicated, because then it's the select board that has to make a decision to ask the voters if they want to finance this through a bond. And it's the general population that makes that decision, but then they put the burden of repaying it on the people that are on the system. It's a little bit convoluted, but we all wear multiple hats, and I think it all works in the final analysis. It has not worked on that particular application, and I agree. We need to continue to try to find a way. And it's one of our, I mean, we talk about it at multiple meetings.
I think we're going to talk a lot about it later.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very much forward to your involvement in finding the answers to those issues.
Well, I don't live in this town. Can I help?
I know you have property in this town, so you can help.
Could help over.
Are there other comments on the proposed town plan that we're talking about right now in the context of this hearing? Comments or questions? We are in a public hearing, so the only action that we can take would be to close or recess the hearing. My recommendation would be at this point, since this is the second of two, would be to close the hearing.
Move to close the hearing.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. It looks like it was 5-0. Okay,
Mr. Chairman, can I make a suggestion?
yes.
Could we possibly revise the agenda to move item number 12 up to right now?
We can. And I can do that by insertion. And let me just, at this point, declare that the select board meeting is open
Okay,
and called to order. And the recommendation is to move agenda item 12, which is the select board to possibly approve and adopt the proposed town plan up to the first order of business. We probably should put it under public comments, and that was what you
yep.
proposed. Okay. So I'm going to let everyone know that that's what we're going to do. After the public comment section, we will immediately go down to agenda item 12 and deal with that. So now, as is the way that we conduct the meeting now, it's open to public comments. This is on any item that you want to speak about that's not on the agenda. If anybody has something that they want to talk about right now that's not on the agenda, now would be the time to bring it up. Carl. Yes, please, to the podium.
First, I want to congratulate you on the sale of the town property on Depot Street. It's been a long process. That's behind you. And I want to just make a suggestion to think about is to put some of that money, whatever you think is good, into some kind of revolving loan fund that can be used for various projects. For example, Jonathan and Greg were at an April 9th meeting about a thermal energy network, thinking about hooking up Wiley Rink compressors, which have waste heat, with the town hall and using that like a ground source heat pump that wouldn't require expensive drilling. So it's just, an idea. And then like for that, as an example, the savings from the expense for heating this building go toward paying back. And it's a revenue generating system if other people hook up to it. Again, paying back that loan. It's just an idea. But also want to, we got a few people here. May 17th, we have the Energy Fair in this room, Saturday from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. And even though we have tons of ads, EQX and GNAD, word of mouth is still the best. So we're going to have Rock Community Action, Efficiency Vermont, Heat Squad from NeighborWorks, Western Vermont. Yeah, a lot of people, Green Mountain Power, people with solar, wind, heat pumps. So you can learn a lot. There'll be a lot of information about how to save money and save energy. So you guys can talk about that, promote that, that'd be great. Other than that, that's all I want to say.
Thank you, Carl. And just, the town has a number of capital accounts. The biggest one being our CERC fund, the capital improvement reserve, whatever the heck it is, the old UDAG account. We have used those funds over time to try to stabilize property taxes. We also have a property tax relief fund. We have minimum balances, expectations for where those accounts should be. And I think our first priority by selling off a physical asset and receiving a capital amount of money is to replenish those accounts to where they're stabilized and can continue to offer the taxpayer relief that they have for decades now. There are any number of really good ideas coming in as to how we should spend that money. And I want to tell people, I'm sure you're very much aware, that $1 million doesn't go very far anymore. Yeah, I think that's a really good suggestion, and we should certainly look at it, Carl, and I appreciate you bringing that up. We had talked about it before, actually. Steve, you had a comment? Okay. Somebody, Cindy Luce.
Hi, this is Cindy Luce. I'm the Executive Director for Bennington County Habitat. I just want to invite everybody to join us on the State House lawn on May 21st, Wednesday. We're doing a dome-to-home build gathering, and we're building 20 panels for the house that we're going to be constructing at 70 Jennifer Lane. So it's all the Vermont habitats are there, and we invite the public to join us, and you can find out more information on our website at benningtoncountyhabitat.org. So thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. Any other public comments?
I do want to make that comment that, I think that was good that what Carl suggested. Can it happen that in part, some of that money be, I don't want to say willed over to the sewer and water department to get a jump on the water and sewer on Richville Road?
It could. There's ways to transfer money from the general fund to various departments. But the accounting becomes very tricky if the town were to take an asset that belongs to our constituents and give it to a department that has a much smaller focus and all those people don't share in the same needs. So it's possible.
It was just a thought.
Yeah, it's just possible, but it can become tricky. And like I said, $1 million
Yeah.
can go away very quickly. Yes, please.
My name is Virginia DeLahaye, and I'm here tonight during the public comment period to ask you to reconsider my request that you discussed at the April 15th meeting that I was unfortunately unable to attend because I'm an enrolled agent with the IRS. I've returned with a proposal for a revision to this very flag policy. My aim.
Actually, the flag policy is on the agenda for later in the meeting.
Perfect. I have things I would like to give you for that.
Okay, we will get to that when we get to that agenda.
Perfect.
Right now, the public comments part is for things that are not on the agenda that the people want
So
to.
there will be a time during
There
that
definitely-
portion.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes.
Evening. My name is Phil Snow. I'm a resident of Main Street here in Manchester Center. I wanted to give the select board an update on the
speed limit changes on Main Street, the 25 and 35 mile an hour speed zones. I live in the 25 mile an hour speed zone. And the education that was to be done, which I guess has been happening over the last 6 months, has not worked. The average speed is still 35 to 40 miles an hour in the 25 mile an hour zone. I don't know what the 35 is because I can't see up that far up the street, but coming out of town, they're still taking off. Once they get to the top of the hill at Barnville. The local excavation dump trucks, the huge ones, from one of the local contractors that comes every day, is just recklessly driving through those speed zones. We still have the kids with the airfoils on the back of their cars, using out of town as their racetrack, taking off, doing excessive speeds. So one of the things I thought were to be done was to move the traffic calming sign that's in front of the Palmer House back to the start of the 35 mile an hour zone. So I was hoping that that could be done. Again, to start getting people to slowing down where the 25 mile an hour zone starts. Certainly adding a couple more 25 mile an hour speed zone slides right before the day school, for example, it would be very important. The kids are crossing the street now with the teachers. So it would be nice to let the kids cross the street without getting killed, as I try to get my mail and get almost killed from people speeding on the street still. So I just wanted to give you that update and request that those couple things might be the next step to try to lower the speed. And more importantly is to have the police actually enforce the speed limits. I know that you don't want to, we want to be nice, but this is public safety. I've got 4-year-olds in 2 houses next to me. I've got a middle school child across the street from me. So there's a lot of kids in that section of the 25 mile an hour speed zone and getting into town. So if you could consider that, I would appreciate it.
Thank you for continuing to bring this to the surface for us. And it continues to be a work in progress. Any other public comments? Yes.
Hi, my name is Linda, and I actually, before Mr. Snow started to talk, I want to make sure that I am not contradicting him, but I want to make sure that you knew that I feel that the 35 mile an hour zone area where I live has improved greatly. I also have to cross the street for my mail. I have mobility issues and I move kind of slowly these days. And I feel like I've seen an improvement in the 35 mile an hour zone. I will admit that that's probably not the same for the 25 mile an hour zone. That's there's one sign that I think I can see as I head into town that says now drop down to 25. And I don't think there's any warning signs that I recall seeing. And a 25 mile an hour is a challenge, I think, for most people to do. I'm not saying it's not important. I'm just saying that's my opinion on the 25 mile an hour zone. But I feel like I've seen an improvement in the 35 mile an hour zone. But I will say that I don't know how it's managed or how it's done, but the newer cars these days will tell you what the speed zone is on your dash somewhere. And we have 2 cars in our household that have that feature, and they both still say 45 miles an hour. So there's probably a good reason why people
For that,
are getting
there are
ticketed.
several different mechanisms by which cars will tell you what the speed limit is. And some of them actually read the speed limit sign, but not most. And some of them are still operating on old data that has not been updated. So, and then there's some that are in between that may be actually recognizing it.
Sure. Well, I just wanted to point that out, but I can say that I feel like there's been an improvement. I have an easier time going across the street to get my meds. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Linda. Public comments, other public comments? I don't see any, so we'll move into the agenda. I'd ask for approval of the minutes from our select board meetings of April 15th and April 22nd.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes for April 15th and April 22nd.
Is there a second?
Second.
Not looking at the minutes and having not looked at them recently, were we all present for both of those meetings? Okay, so we don't need to separate them. All in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That's 5-0 and the minutes are approved. We have some liquor license renewals.
We moved up item 12.
Oh, yes, we did. And I immediately went right past it. We're going to go to item 12. Thank you. Thank you, Greg, which is to approve and adopt the town plan potentially. We just had the public hearing. We closed it. We cannot take any more testimony. The time for that is passed. That was in the public hearing. So it's a simple decision by this board. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chairman, to approve and adopt the proposed 2025 town plan.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, that's 5-0 and the town plan is adopted. Thank you. Okay, liquor license renewals. Do we have the list? The list, please.
Yep.
Yes, it's the updated one, and I'll just read these out loud. There's Cold Cow Creamery, Thuringi Inc., which is Depot 62, Ellen Bogan Gallery, Firefly Restaurant, Floating Bird, LLC, Italian Market of Manchester, Fortuna's Market, Jill Bradley, which is Greener Pastures Smoke Shop, Vermont Pure Foods, which is Nature's Market, Kitchen Sink Restaurant Group, that's Roadrunner, the Roundhouse Bar and Grill, Smuggler's Notch Distillery, and Corey Mears, who is the Avocado Pit. And there is one, all these that I just listed submitted their applications on time, and they went through the process and were reviewed by police and town manager and the town clerk for any possible issues, and they all passed. In the meantime, we got a request from Manchester House of Pizza. They did not get their application submitted on time. And there are no issues with that particular application. However, they didn't get the application in on time. We can add that here at the meeting because it's a renewal and not a new request. It's not something that we prefer to do, and we've had discussions with the owners, and they've promised that it won't happen again. It has happened from time to time. The problem is if we don't renew it this evening, their license expires, and it's going to be a huge impact on their business for a considerable period of time. So we do try to accommodate people. So I'm asking by insertion that Manchester House of Pizza be added to the list. And I think we need to deal with that separately to add it to the list and make sure that it's okay with the board. I guess a motion. to add Manchester House of Pizza to the list would be in order.
I'll make, I think,
I move to add Manchester House of Pizza to the list of renewals.
Okay, moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, now we're dealing with a complete list. And I would entertain a motion on the list itself.
I move to approve the liquor licenses, renewal applications for liquor licenses for the attached, the list of, that was recited.
It's tobacco and liquor, we should
Should I go on that?
say.
Yes.
So that's-
Second. Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, and it's approved. We typically don't sign these.
Yeah.
We used to, but that's all changed now, so. Okay, agenda item number 9 is to possibly approve a vendor license application. This is the Manchester, Vermont Farmers Market. They're applying for a Class 3 vendor license, which applies to farmers markets.
Same locations and everything.
Yeah, there's no issues with any of the appropriate departments.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the vendor license for the farmer's market.
Second.
Any discussion?
Can I make a comment?
Well, we're discussing a motion by it's at the table, but because we're good neighbors, yeah, make it quick.
Just a question, Class 3, can you identify what that is and what their cost is?
Yeah, first of all, I'll tell you that a Class 3 vendor is a farmer's market. It's pretty much all it is. So, the license for a Class 3 vendor is $400.
Why is that so high? When was that done?
Well, a Class 2 is $1,000.
And that's what? That,
Class 2 is not more than 200 square feet, but it has 3 employees and it's year round.
so that's the other vendors basically that.
No, there's a Class 1, which is not more than 100 square feet, has up to 2 employees, and that's year round.
Like Nancy's.
And that one's 600, and then a Class 1 vendor is not more than 100 square feet, up to 2 employees, but it's seasonal, May 1st to October 31st only, and that's 400.
That was just changed to try to get in.
Yeah, we adjusted the fees a while ago, and we adjust them. Some of these require a lot of administrative oversight, and it's only fair that the applicant cover the expense of administering the application, and quite a few of them actually require visual inspections throughout the year to make sure they're in compliance.
Okay, thank you.
So you have a motion and a second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. That's 5-0, and it's approved. Okay, the next agenda item is housekeeping issues. This is actually for the Main Street sewer extension bond. And we need to certify that the project has been completed to the Vermont Bond Bank. And just look at these numbers, it's the first time I'm seeing them. Katie, do you know,
These are the balances. Yeah.
these are the balances?
Yeah.
Yeah.
De minimis, right?
Yeah, they're minimal amounts of money. The balance is as of March 31st.
That's what we didn't draw down.
25. There's a balance of $76 on Series 1 and about $3,800 on Series 2. That's the remainder of the funds, and we need to zero that out. So Yeah, that's what will take place when we certify the projects are complete.
What was the total cost?
On that one, I don't have that number in front of me.
I don't have either.
Yeah, it's, it. Memory is not gonna serve me well on this one. I'm sorry. Yeah. It was,
So there's grants, there are other things that. can-
yeah, there were a lot of, there were other funding sources in play on that one, grants. We bonded. Again, I don't have those numbers in front of me, but I think it was less than 50% of the total cost. Because of available grants and other sources of revenue.
If it's dispensed with, we all, I think we also.
We all have to sign both of these pages. But we need a motion to execute this certification.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to sign the bond bank completion of project certificates.
And is there a second?
Second,
Moved and seconded, all in favor, say aye.
aye.
Aye. That's 5-0. Okay, we asked for bids. We made a request for bids to connect with the town office and emergency facility to connect to the town sewer. The town received 3 bids from the RFP, and I have those in front of me. The first, okay. The first is Herman Construction. And the bid amount was $59,125. The second one is Kurtz Excavating out of Shaftesbury. Their bid was $69,620. And the third bid was Weaver Excavating out of Bennington, and their bid was $86,500. It's quite a spread. Typically in these situations, the award to the lowest bidder, and it's nice that in this case it's somebody local as well. So my recommendation would be to award the bid to Herman Construction.
And he does most of your construction anyway. Water and sewer. He knows. I mean.
We have quite a bit of experience with several construction companies, but Herman is quite often the low bidder on these. And he also, in full disclosure, does emergency excavation if we have a water line break or a sewer break or something like that.
Send that bond letter. back.
Okay, I'm sorry. Katie took it from me.
No,
I think we all have to sign.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah, we'll do it now because
Okay.
he'll wind up forgetting.
I was looking for those. I couldn't find them.
Okay, so is there a motion to award the bid?
So moved.
Moved to award the bid to Herman Construction. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
That was, did you get the vote? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And there's no signature required on that, so. Thank you, Katie. All right, we also requested responses for ideas as to what we might do with the town-owned airport road property. We have received some responses.
Yes, we've received 3 separate responses. DEW, Herman, and Integrated Manchester Housing Initiative. Those three responses were sent in a separate email, I believe. And we do have some copies printed on the table for you all to review as well. But Scott recommended to review them. We can talk about them and then definitely establish a time in the future to interview applicants on their proposals at a regular meeting or a special meeting. That was his recommendation.
Okay.
That's this one, then this is the Herman one. More.
Do they want to present?
Is there anybody here that wants to present on any of these, that's related to these proposals? If not, they represent, some are more,
Robust.
yes, have more detail than others. Some are conceptual. One at least has an extreme amount of detail. We're certainly not prepared to make any kind of a decision on any of these, and I think it will require review by the Housing Task Force, among others. I see Cindy Luce wants to speak to this. Cindy.
Hi, I also want to just make sure the select board knows and received the letter that Bennington County Habitat sent. We aren't in the position to do the full development, but we would love to be part of the solution, part of the partnership. So I'm not sure what has come in for proposals, but if anybody is interested in allowing us to partner with them, Habitat is very interested in being part of this. And I sent a letter saying that to Scott, and I hope it got to you guys.
Thank you, Cindy. Yeah, Heidi.
So is there, I think it would make sense if we could do something in conjunction with a housing task force where we could have these three proposals kind of brought out in front of the public.
Yeah.
And the people that are, the principals at these organizations can go into some of the details of it. And then it can open it up for a public discussion. Is that something that we could?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think it's on this type of a thing where we're talking about different conceptions and designs. It's important for the companies making the proposal to make a presentation as to what their proposal is.
I think it's a great idea. I think the one other thing I wanted to highlight, and I don't know if the board's aware of this or not, but Dorset also just put out an RFP for a very similar scenario. And I just want to highlight some of the things that the municipality is actually putting on the plate. This is for the property behind where they're building the new town office. It's roughly.
Is that in East Dorset?
No, it's in Dorset, past J.K. Adams on the right before the quarry. Yeah. It's a 300-acre town-owned property. They've been doing due diligence. And indicates that the property can likely accommodate 100 plus or minus housing units. And the town is committing that they have obviously existing town-owned gravel roads. They have the infrastructure for electrical and other infrastructure. The price that they would be offering the land at is $1. The town contribution of up to $2 million for needed infrastructure. Town contribution of up to $250,000 for share of pre-construction costs, town assistance in pursuing funding opportunities, and town as co-applicant on local and Act 250 permit applications. That's just kind of the highlights. I just wanted to point that out, that we are a larger municipality. We have the infrastructure we've talked about it. We don't have it down where we were potentially looking at this property, but we have another town that's right on our doorstep that's looking to up the ante, so to speak, on a project potentially this size. So I just want to throw that out there to make it us all aware that our neighbors are doing the same thing. And that's a $2 million infrastructure. Let's just say that there were roads going everywhere on that property, right? And all they had to do was bring sewer, which I don't believe Dorset has sewer. the $2 million, I think if when the folks came, the engineers, and we looked at the cost of the $6 million, there was the potential of 2 million that could come from grants, and we were looking at a 2 million, and then there was other opportunities, whether it was from private partnerships. So they're already putting their money where their mouth is here on that.
Well, so should we work on getting a date on the calendar?
Well, I think we should, yeah, it's, otherwise nothing ever happens.
So when you mentioned the housing task force, we have our next meeting. And I know Cindy actually won't be able to attend that one, but our next meeting is Thursday, the 22nd. Is that, were you considering having these be part of the discussion as part of an open forum with the housing task force, or is it be something that we would like
Well,
do
I think
that
it could be
first?
something
Or
that the public should be invited to,
Oh,
and
yeah.
then all three bidders could come in and, or responders to the RFP could come in and make a proposal. And if we have the opportunity to look at things, you know, side by side, it might bring up, you know, just give a little more depth to some of these and figure out, there's a lot of extra information in some of them. So, yeah, I think that would be, but it doesn't have to be at a housing task force meeting. It could be at a totally separate meeting. That would just, I guess we have to think about when would we get the most people that could come and show up and participate. So that would be, I think, more of a consideration than.
So don't think it's gonna be a meeting that we can set tonight.
No.
I think we'll have some discussions and figure out what makes sense, what the forum should be, who should
Lead it.
run the meeting.
Yeah.
Is it a select board meeting? Is it a task force meeting, or is it going to be officiated by someone that we have run the meeting and then the select board and the
Right.
task force can sit and participate without actually having to run the meeting. And that would be consistent with other planning meetings that we've had in the past and that sort of thing, where we had a moderator come in and moderate the meeting for us.
Well, do we have to warn it with like 2 weeks' notice? Is that typically what we like to do?
I don't know what the statutory requirement would be on that, but it probably would be 2 weeks. Yeah.
So late May, early June aspirationally?
Ivan, I just have a question. Are these RFPs going to be made available on the town website so the taxpayers can see this prior to this meeting?
Katie says they could be.
Thanks, Kate.
I mean, they're, at this point, they've been received and we've referenced them in a public meeting, so they are public documents.
We can put them on the website.
All.
I have a quick comment. I am one of the proposals in the Integrated Manchester Housing Initiative. I'm going to go back to the beginning of the meeting where we discussed the APO. And I think it's important for the town to recognize the select board, and I'm sure you do, but all of this is for naught if you do not figure out how to deal with the aquifer protection overlay, because this piece of property lies within the subzone B. And our proposal was purposely vague because we don't really know what the town wants to do. And to be honest with you, it's the third time we've participated in this RFP process in 10 years on that piece of property with no real follow-up from the town. So I ask you two things to consider. One, possibly delay the town plan adoption. I know you did it, but I wanted to say before, because this property doesn't fall in any zoning that allows for workforce housing. It lies in the APO subzone B, which doesn't allow for any development. And there is no municipal sewer there. So I'll say that first. The other piece of the puzzle, I think that's important, is it does, although, have the ability to have a great deal of federal, well, who knows if there's federal funding, but there could potentially be some funding that could help with all of this if the select board, the zoning, could adopt some preferential, zoning for that site. I shouldn't use the word preferential, but, I think you should know that. The other question I have that I ask out of respect for everyone's time is, could you set a timeline that's reasonable to respond to the three folks that, or entities that offered a proposal? And within, I don't know, a few months maybe sounds reasonable to let us know if it's for real or not, because I do.
I think that's a reasonable request, and you may not have heard, but the hope is to have this meeting, whatever form it's going to take, and I need some help from Scott and others to tell me what it should be. End of May, early June, so that we can actually get the proposals out there, discuss them, and see what it does. As far as getting sewer, there's two different components to having sewer on that particular property. One is getting the ability to take sewer from the property, to get the municipal sewer line to the edge of the property. That could cost anywhere from $1.5 to $2 million. And these are very rough numbers. What would the town's participation be in? Because that makes a huge difference as to what happens to the property. And then you have the collection system within the property, which would most likely be borne by the developers themselves. But one of the big questions is, how do you get the ability to receive that sewer to the edge of the property? And I think the municipality, appears to be a feeling that the municipality might want to participate in that. So that's all I can say at this point, because that's as far as we've gotten.
Yeah, I don't know what the other proposals mentioned, but we offered $1 million to participate with the town match for bringing the sewer there, which is similar, I think. I know we don't have exact numbers, but we were just really following what happened on Main Street, where there was public and private participation to get the sewer out here. So we really didn't reinvent ourselves. We just followed what was going on in the town the past few years. So, great. And the Dorset thing is very interesting.
That is interesting.
Yeah.
You're a Dorset guy. You must know all about it.
We helped them write it.
Person with their hand up.
Yes, Kathy. Yeah, there's a microphone for the people that are on Zoom.
I'm a pretty practical person. I don't build buildings or anything that you've been talking about, but I would like the board, and I hope the Dorset board is doing this too, to take some practical considerations into their thinking regarding any housing that is built on a large scale here. And that is, we're closing schools in our local areas. We haven't decided how we're going to build schools to house the children that we presently have. If you were to build, say, 50 units, possibly you could have 2 children coming out of every household there. That would be an increase of 100 children. None of the buildings as they presently stand, particularly with 2 of the school buildings closing down, would be able to take on that many more students immediately from a housing project. I also think we have to think back on what it was like here in COVID when we added a lot of people to the town and the medical services went haywire. People who had been living here for years could not access their doctors. They could not access the services that they needed. And before you go into the whole housing aspect of things, where are we going to service these people and their families? I also would like to know if indeed people who will live in the houses will accept the jobs that are in this town. Or are we developing a whole new set of jobs to employ them, which would be wonderful. But there are signs in every store and every business in this town right now and people are not taking them, and people are staying home and getting state dollars from our tax money to fund their lifestyle because it's easier than going out and getting one of the jobs that's posted in the town. So I would think about that. There are always town considerations such as roads, transportation, getting people from wherever they need to go to the next place. I think that those of us who have been living here for a length of time, who are now getting on in age and are paying our taxes with Social Security incomes, are a large number of people, and they get larger every year. And those people cannot afford to have the impact of what a larger population is going to need in services. So I hope that there will be a big consideration put on all those things, but only because it's fair to the new people and it's fair to the people who have been here previously. Those are all things that I just want you to think about, and I would like the whole town to think about. And I see you here, Paige, from the library, and I think the library does a fabulous job on providing senior entertainment, junior entertainment, everything. But the library's primary purpose is to be a library. And if we keep bringing people in and expect that those services, we don't have a senior center even in this town, which some of the most small towns in the state have. I don't think we can expect somebody outside of the town to be always picking up on this. And it is already primarily the tax dollar of the Manchester taxpayers that is voted on for the library, and not the other taxpayers who use the library from around our surrounding towns. So I think there's a lot to be thought about in the impact that any kind of housing could have for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Kathy, you covered a lot of ground there, and I certainly appreciate every one of your comments. And those are it just scratches the surface of all the impacts that any large scale.
But it will be too late if the housing is built and we don't have those things in place.
But it also is very difficult to have those things in place without the population to support it. So it's a chicken and egg sort of thing. And that's what happens when you get a large change in population demographics rather than incremental slow change, which is what we've normally experienced over time. So the one thing that I would like to add to what you said, and I've said it at several meetings, is we have a lot of people in this town that scrimped and saved and were able to pool their resources with their family and purchase a place and pay the mortgage and pay the taxes, and they're barely getting by, but they're doing it and they're happy with their little piece of Manchester. And I want to make sure that we're not negatively impacting those people who have done it the old-fashioned way by subsidizing, using their money for somebody else to come in and have an easier ride. And so that's a balance that we have to maintain too. I don't want to ask the people that are on Social Security and still making all their payments and try to eke out a living to subsidize what we're doing so somebody else can come in and have a little bit easier time.
Ivan, if I may, I just want to clarify though, our schools, the reason why our schools are struggling is that they're 30% under enrolled. Why? It's because when I went to MEMS, there were 400 and some odd students there, and now there's 300 students there. Why? It's because we don't have the students to fill the seats, right?
Ask the teachers. The numbers when my children went 40 years ago are still the same. My kids both had classrooms of 15 and 17 from kindergarten through 8th grade. And that's exactly what you see in classrooms now.
I mean, I was in the same class with Matthew. We had 3 teachers for each grade with 15 to 20 students per class, right? No, the fourth grade class is one class is 20 and another is 15. But my point is that we had 3 teachers, right, that made up a single grade. Now we have 2 at MEMS. So there is a 30% under enrollment to reach the max capacity of all these schools. And it's not just MEMS, it's Dorset, it's Courier, it's Sunderland, and it's Floodbrook. We also have a struggle with, yes, I understand, we had a strain on our medical facilities, but if we don't have a place for the doctors and the nurses to live, they're not going to move here to work. So
They did not come before when we had the last crash of people coming in and we were looking for new doctors and new nurses. They're still short.
So all I will say though, Kathy, is that the last piece is that our average age is increasing greater in Vermont than any other state in the nation, right? If we continue on that path, we're going to continue in a direction where we're not going to be able to support the things that we're going to need, and it's going to become more expensive. I mean, I saw a home that came on the market yesterday in Manchester, I'm sorry if this is someone's house is in here. It's a modular home on a 1/4 acre for $400,000. That's unbelievable. So whatever we're doing, it's not working.
Or if you're the person who invested in that property.
Oh, yeah, it's great for them.
It's working. I mean, there's 2 sides to it, and that's the trouble with all these issues is, people, we had a great person in this town that had a development, and you live there, Kathy, and they were affordable homes, and he wanted to have affordable homes. He wanted to have a development that people could afford, working people could afford to live in. But there were no controls over what happened with those prices. And as you've certainly seen it in your neighborhood, they took off and they escalated. But there was a demand, and there were people that moved there because they could afford to live there. Certainly your family was one of them. And there needs to be, and this is why we have a housing task force and all that. Unfortunately, the free market system prices it very quickly out of the working person's range. And I'm a big proponent of free enterprise. But the reality is that it's always going to be expensive to live in Manchester, even when we're looking at really what's considered to be pretty affordable houses. It's still a lot of money, and the trouble is there used to be opportunities in the surrounding towns, but now the prices have escalated, and it's not what the towns have done that's caused that to happen. It's just because this is a very desirable place to live, and people that have means want to live here, and other opportunities have made purchasing homes attractive for other things like Airbnb and so forth. And that's driving the market price. And so if we don't somehow control the market price, people are not going to be able to afford to live here, working people. And that's true nationwide. Wilbur. Agenda items.
Oh, yeah, we're at the R.
Yeah.
I think the issues brought up by the young lady are really more significant than at first blush. I don't think that the Planning Commission is doing what it should do. And I think it's a big issue is how do we get to where we want to be in 5 or 10 years? How do we protect the people who are having a real problem today? How do we deal with the issues of schools? How do we deal with all these different issues? That's planning. And planning, we're not doing planning. We're doing stopgap things like filling out a town plan that says, if you read the town plan, I'm gonna get killed for this one. If you read the town plan, it really doesn't answer any of these questions. It basically says, we want to have this lovely place to live, and we all want to be good neighbors and this and that. That's it. And we don't want to have the sewer and the water combined. I mean, we're not doing the job. And we got to do the job better. And I wonder whether one of the things that we should do with $50,000 or $100,000 is to hire somebody to come in here and lead us through a process of actual planning, of what we should be doing, how we address these issues of housing. Are we doing the wrong thing with housing? Are we should, maybe the housing should become secondary to answering these questions first. Those issues that were brought up are really valid. And I saw it when we started working with this, redo the town plan. It didn't help us. It hasn't done anything for us. And I'm sorry to take that perspective. We have to change the ordinances so they're easy to understand. We have to make sure they meet the town plan and both are homogenized. We have to make sure the town plan is easy to understand. Instead of 120 pages, it should be 20 pages and a lot of addendums and appendixes. But we're not doing it. And if we went out to get a pro, he'd tell us we're not doing it right. And I suspect it's no different in Middlebury. It's no different in Wilmington or Woodstock or whatever. We need some help, professional help, to come in and tell us how to be where we want to be in 10 years. So I leave that to the select board.
Thank
Can I
you.
say something? I mean, I think that this brings up a really good opportunity for you to participate in this upcoming meeting as well. And
I was going to say that. I mentioned it to Peter. It's funny that we're talking about planning things and we're not including the planning commission. But back to what I said before, the issue is really big. And it's not just sitting down to talk about this or that. It's a whole, I mean, this could be a 6-month process with a pro that's going to come in and charge us 50 to 75,000, I don't know what. And that's what we need to do.
I think there might be
Oh,
a
well,
difference of opinion and.
I don't want a free-form conversation going on. Wilbur has the floor right now. When he is done, I'll gladly recognize you to come up and say something, but I can't let the meeting get out of hand. Wilbur appears to be done.
Damn, I think I said enough.
Would you let, well,
Oh, go ahead.
no, okay. I'm gonna go with Tim next because we haven't heard from him.
Before Wilbur got up and, I'm sorry, Tim Lawler, live in Manchester. Before Wilbur got up, the question I had, were there any constraints put on that request for proposals? I think it'd be nice, it sounded like it was pretty vague. And I would encourage the town next time around, or maybe as we evolve this time, this opportunity to be a little more deliberate and engage in some planning, as Wilbur pointed out.
Okay, the proposal specifically asked, the request asked for a proposal for the use and development of all or a portion of the 60.15 acres of land. These are bullet points. Bullet point 2, a proposal for contributing financially or through in-kind services to the extension of water and sewer from Richville Road to the site. Bullet point 3, a proposal to purchase, enter a long-term lease, enter into a partnership with the town or such approach as the developer deems advisable and appropriate, with purchase and or lease payments clearly identified. Next bullet, if payment to the town is proposed to be structured over a period of time instead of a lump sum, a detailed description of how such payments would be made and all other relevant conditions associated with such payments. And the next bullet point last was a description of the length of any requested due diligence period and estimated time to complete the project. The project purpose and objectives was, okay, that's the bottom of the page. That's okay, we're good. Yeah, just take your back up to that. Okay, there it is. Okay, we had a section called project purpose and objectives, and the primary objective of this request for proposals is to obtain a plan for development which includes a significant workforce housing component, which produces financial resources through a sale or long-term lease, and the town is flexible and willing to consider any and all proposals for the development of the property if the town receives an identifiable and reasonable something which went off the page and I can't say it.
No, I understand. And there, it sounds like there were.
It's very vague, and it was letting people get creative with what they were proposing. It was centered around divesting ourselves of the parcel, which might include a sale or a lease arrangement. But we were open to all kinds of suggestions because we don't do this. Town does not develop property.
I understand what you're saying, and I'm suggesting the exact opposite. It sounds like people are pretty concerned about the theme or the flavor or something that makes Manchester special. And by opening up, transferring that creativity to someone else, you could get some things that really clash with the rest of town. And it'd be terrible to put in a big investment with a big plan that you believe in and then have the town like, that doesn't really work here. So having some kind of framework and pitch as part for the town to put that out, I think would help next time and would line up with what Wilbur was.
Who's going to create that framework?
Well, I think if we got a pro in here and do some urban planning, that would help.
Well, first of all, and I had this issue with other town planners that we've had, is that a lot of urban planning methods don't work in a rural small town. And I often hear us compared to Saratoga, New York. We are nothing like Saratoga, New York. If Saratoga was in Vermont, it would be Vermont's largest city. There's very little comparable between the Manchester, Vermont, and Saratoga. And urban planning methods that apply to what's a very small city anywhere else in the world don't really work in a rural town like Manchester. So I'm really concerned when we put all our eggs in one person's basket. They would have to know an awful lot about a municipality like Manchester, know a lot about the history of Manchester, know a lot about why people choose to live here, and what it is that we're actually looking to create before they came up with any suggestions. We're in the same boat. I am in no position to be putting parameters on what Paul or anybody else is going to give us as a proposal. I want to hear what they have to say. And then
Leave it to the town to provide feedback.
yeah, and I think that's when other people from the community need to get involved and let us know, hey, we don't think this is good for Manchester. Maybe it doesn't fit.
I totally hear where you're coming from, but to me, that sounds like risk, right? If the right people don't show up, then the town takes a curve and you end up somewhere you might want to be. I'm just throwing that out there. I'd like to.
Request for a proposal. That's what that's the
Yeah.
beauty of it is that then we have the ability to discuss it and mull it over and compare it and.
It would go through the DRB process,
Yeah.
right?
Well, and ultimately, if we chose
yeah.
a direction with this, yeah.
I think you've heard me. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Before I let you speak, I just want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity before we. Carl, you haven't spoken to this particular issue, but we'll get back to you, Kat.
I worked for a while with Habitat for Humanity, and one of the things that they do when they look for people in their homes is they're looking for a connection to Manchester. So, have you lived here? Are you working here? That type of thing, in addition to financial stuff. So it's not a bad idea to think about something like that. The other thing would be unpopular. I think the town should outlaw any middle class home or lower turning into an Airbnb. you're just outlawed. I'm sure that some of the price increase in housing is because speculators are buying homes, turning them into short-term rental. And there are other towns that have addressed that and have figured out ways to either slow it down or eliminate it. It has to have an effect on housing. I mean, in my neighborhood, 2 homes that were, working class people living in. They're now not there. They're empty except for short-term rentals. It's a waste, absolute waste.
I believe at the last house,
And the other,
where we were talking about something like 100 homes in Manchester that are now.
that's a lot.
Airbnb.
75.
And the other thing,
75.
John talked about, my kids are about the same age as Jonathan. And I am so happy that there was only one elementary school in town that everyone went to, whether you're rich or poor, handicapped or not. And one of the reasons I think we don't have a full school is we have Maple Street School and we have all these alternatives. And they're siphoning off a lot of kids.
So I'm gonna let you speak, Kathy, but I'm gonna focus the conversation back on what the agenda item is.
Right.
Which is the 3 proposals that we've received.
Okay.
And it's really up to the board with, of course, your participation to figure out what we're going to do with these proposals. And I don't think it serves any of us well for the board to just look these over and say, oh, gee, we think this is a good idea and run with it. I think that we need to get some input from the community as we're getting here this evening. But this discussion isn't on the agenda. We were simply receiving these proposals. But, and we're still okay time-wise. So I'm letting this kind of play out. And I hope that people are getting excited about it, so they'll be willing to attend a meeting that's dedicated to this issue. This issue, something in those cookies. I'm allergic to. Losing my voice. Happens. Delicious though. Kathy, yes, please.
I have a question regarding schools also. Probably our biggest budget item that comes up every year is how much we're going to be paying through our taxes for the school. Is that correct? So now if we make all the schools readily available to all the towns, because we're putting everybody together. Previously, at least when I moved into Manchester, we looked at the Manchester school, and although it was expensive to live in Manchester, we wanted our children in that school. So we were willing to have everybody in the household work at the time, and things that some people can't afford to do right now. So what would it be of an advantage to me to move to the town of Manchester for the school system, as I did 40 years ago, as opposed to just moving to one of the outlying areas with a lower school tax and being able to send my children to the same schools?
So I think what we're going to do with this is we'll discuss it with town staff and the various people involved, planning commission, everybody, see if we can work out a dedicated meeting to dealing with the 3 proposals that we've received, but in a larger context, so that we can have some of these discussions in the context of a meeting that's set up to receive them. Gonna have to think about Wilder's idea and see if that plays into getting the right direction out of this too. So there's we have a lot to discuss and nothing that we're going to resolve here this evening.
Let's eliminate the word urban from these discussions, okay?
Yeah.
Can I just speak to that? Sorry, I just have to say this, but so we're, this has been a discussion that we've had on an ongoing basis with your committee, that we know how much work was put into this plan that we just now revised, and that it was done with a ton of input from the town. And so what we've said for the last 4 years, sitting on this board, was that we don't really want an outside consultant to come and put their mark on it. We want you guys to go through the plan and figure out what makes sense now and what needs further development, and not outsource this to somebody else. I mean, that was my understanding of it. It has nothing to do with the money. It has to do with the way that we came to this plan was through a ton of input from the community. So, and I think we all agree that there's a lot of superfluous information in there that we don't need. And there's a lot that is not in there having to do with, you know, cell phone towers or things that we just didn't focus on 10 years ago that we definitely need to focus on now. So instead of waiting for somebody to come and kind of take this for you, I would love to see you guys come back to us and redline the thing and say, this is where we know we need to focus. And then if there's an organization like BCRC or somebody else that can guide you further, let's use them then, but don't throw away this whole thing. This is something that was created with a whole lot of thought and a whole lot of effort.
Can I respond to that?
Absolutely.
I kind of agree and I kind of don't. We talked to one consultant who impressed us a great deal, but basically we were driven to BCRC. I personally think that Wilmington, Stowe, Woodstock, all the towns that are what I call resort towns that are about the same size as Manchester are dealing with the same issues. And I think we need somebody to come in here who's looked at all of these, who has experience in the non-urban, in the rural town issues, and try to help us. I don't think the Planning Commission itself, or pardon me, the Select Board themselves can answer all these questions. We need a pro to come in here. BCRC, it was very nice. They're very young. Bill was not involved really. It was some very young people that helped us. But, and I'm going to disappoint you when I say that I think you got to put the town plan aside and kind of start anew as to how we're going to be where we want to be in 10 years. And it's going to be a long process finding out how you do that. And it's related to what Jonathan is involved with. Let's just say for discussion's sake that committee gets through programs like this, 40 housing units somewhere, and all of a sudden only 20 of them are filled. And people still want to drive from Granville because it's easier, cheaper, whatever, than to utilize this new housing we've provided for them. That's a major mistake in the planning of how we deal with the issues that face us in Manchester. I think we got to step away from the day-to-day stuff that the Planning Commission is supposed to do, the Select Board is supposed to do, and get this process going where we have some help addressing the big issues and hopefully finding answers. It's not going to be in here. This is going to help maybe, but there's poetry in here about how we want to have this lovely river run through our main town or something. But there are other issues, and I don't think we're taking the right path to fix them.
Can I ask a question?
We've had a number of processes that we've gone through over the years, vision processes where the community was involved in a major way, sometimes 200 to 300 people over a period of time, prioritizing issues, and a lot of what's in the town plan refers back to some of those vision processes. The world has changed a lot in the last decade, and I think we need to perhaps facilitate another set of meetings where people are able to focus on the direction that they want the town to go. That shouldn't be dictated from the top down. That should come from the community up.
But we need help and somebody who's going to lead that process.
Yes, we need a facilitator.
Yes.
Okay.
Wilbur, I just want to clarify that I think we went to the BCRC to make sure that we could meet the deadline, and they helped us get there so that now that we've adopted this, we can go really at it in the way that you're recommending, right? The BCRC helped us meet those required deadlines.
We had a deadline that we created because we didn't do the process correctly in terms of going and looking for help financially. That didn't move along as it should have, which pushed us to a tough timetable. And yes, that's why we went to BCRC instead of somebody else. Yes, but also I want to talk, this will really get me in trouble. I want to talk a little bit about the education thing. Think about this fact. We have problems with the schools that Jonathan just talked about. Yet we have 4 schools around us, Maple Street, Long Trail, SMS, and Burn Burton, that do a fantastic job. Fantastic. Yet we have the schools that are struggling and having problems with not only how many kids go to the school, but the quality of the education. Why don't those schools turn to the 4 private schools and say, hey, how you guys doing it? What's working for you? How are you making this work? Because it's upside down.
Well, but the problem is that's not the approach that's being taken from Montpelier down to us.
Right.
Want to do away with the private schools, but they're not private schools. And this discussion has been going on for a long time. I had a discussion with a former governor who, way back in the context of Act 60, when they started taking local control of education away from the municipalities and moved it to Montpelier. And they, way back then, they were talking about dismantling schools like Burr and Burton and the other fine schools that we have in town. And because it created inequality of education issue. And my response was, if I break my leg and go to the doctor, and the doctor tells me, well, we can break your other leg and it'll be equal. That's not the answer I'm looking for. I want my broken leg to be as good as my good leg. And it's the same is true with schools. We have schools that work exceptionally well. But to say, hey, that's not fair to everybody else in the state, so we need to bring those schools down to the same level or eliminate them, doesn't address the issue. I agree with you. What are they doing right? How can we make this work? Maybe it won't work in every application, but that's still not a reason to take away the excellence that exists in those schools. Let's not break the other leg.
That's coming from somebody who raises horses, right?
We really digressed.
We have digressed and we need to get back on track. So we're not going to resolve where we're going with this evening, but we're going to work on it. We're going to come up with a plan and we'll make sure that it's well advertised and I'd like to see a lot of public participation in this. Paul. Yeah.
I just want to try and gather it all together because I think you're really knocking yourselves too much in the negative manner. Think of what the community really is, right? I'm not going to explain it, but I do recognize that we've been forced to this situation by the state government through a land control bill that has imposed the directive through our regional commissions onto us as a community. And I think you should take note of that because a lot of people in this room have said something like that without saying it, and I just said it. And I don't really care. Take the note, stop, I'm just suggesting you don't have to listen to everybody at the state. Like, take the risk, as Tim says, we're already taking risk. Do what we should do on our own. This is one thing the state hasn't entirely taken from us. And pause, throw the town plan out. We don't need the BCRC's town plan. Let's do our own town plan or community plan. And maybe we integrate with Dorset and figure out how it all works together. Just a note, out in Colorado, there's a town in the Rockies that is similar to this community that has, I want to address the workforce housing idea. It's a really well undefined term, right? We don't really know what we're talking about. In Colorado, a town said, you know what, we are talking about teachers. We're talking about first responders. We're talking about doctors. Those are the people we need in our town that need housing. And we may not be talking about the people that drive from Granville that are going to live in that studio apartment that we're going to subsidize. And I think test the state. I challenge you to test the government that we live under and see if we can play by some of our own rules and build our own community without listening to the BCRC or the state.
I hope people understand that towns have no autonomy and no real power to do anything. Anything that we do, it comes through prescription from the state. We are creatures of the state. They tell us what we can and cannot do. There's some wiggle room in there, but every one of us who is elected as a select board member has to sign a document with the state of Vermont that we will do what the state tells us to do. But I questioned it, and for 2 years, I was on this board without having signed that document. And I questioned it, and they didn't pursue it. What they did was they toned it down. But ultimately they said, you can't serve unless you sign this document. So we are creatures of the state. The state does ultimately control everything that we do. We have some room to move within those parameters, but we can't just go out and do something on our own if the state doesn't give us that authority to do it. And that's true of any town in Vermont. And on that lovely note, we'll move on to the next item, which I feel that there may be a lot of people here on this one. Item 14, the select board to review and possibly amend the flag policy with a subsection A, which says exactly the same thing.
This is the one that Sonata's proposed, and then that's the current.
Okay, thank you. Okay, as many of you know, because you were here, the town has been through quite a process over the last year trying to figure out what our flag policy should be, and what we can do to stay within the confines of what the state of Vermont and the federal government tell us we can do, and balance that with what we want to do ourselves. And everything that we consider is somewhat reflected in court cases and Supreme Court cases that discuss this very issue as to what a town or a municipality or a city or even a state can do with flags on that government entity's owned property. And there is leeway there. And we recently went through a process where an application came in to fly a flag, and it was denied on a split vote. And we shouldn't have that kind of dissension on something as simple as what kind of flag do we fly on municipal property. I think the policy needs to be more clear. There were on a split vote, part of the board felt that the policy did not allow the discretion of the board to reach the point where they could approve it. Part of the board felt that the application fully met the expectations of the policy itself. Therefore, there is ambiguity. It's not clear enough, and it does not only does it not give the town the guidance it needs as to how to deal with this policy, it gives the public, it creates confusion, hard feelings, and we need to step away from that. So there is a proposal before us to simplify the flag policy and go back to what very similar to what we did a year ago, which was to allow for on town-owned property that only the United States flag, the Vermont state flag, and municipal departmental flags would be flown on town property. There's a proposal in front of us to change the ordinance, and we're under discussion of that.
And a possible flag, I guess, if there was a town flag, I think was also included in that
Yes.
proposal. And I'll just reiterate some of the points that we had gone over last time. One, that I think it's our responsibility to not invite legal action against the town. And you can have a flag policy that allows for some and says pointedly what others constitute for hate, for example. But to those people who would want to fly that flag, they would argue that point and say that to them, it wasn't hate. And then a possible lawsuit could ensue. The other issue is, as I mentioned last time, the issue is, I think, tearing at the fabric of the town unnecessarily. We've signed a proclamation of inclusion, and we've encouraged people to fly the pride flag, for example, as one flag in their homes. And I think they right now can put it in the windows of their businesses versus flying it in their business. And the third issue is that this falls under, as was brought to my attention from a fellow board member, something called viewpoint discrimination, which sort of goes back to what I was saying about inviting lawsuits. And it really comes down to the viewpoint of the person who feels discriminated against if the municipality is flying one flag and not allowing another to be flown. And so the way to navigate this, as far as I can tell, is to have a policy that allows for the US flag, the state flag, possibly a town flag if there was a town flag, and municipal banners such as the Applejack Field flag, for example. And that's not to say we aren't supportive of people who would like us to fly other flags that don't constitute viewpoint hate, for example. That's it. I think.
He looks right at me.
Okay, Steve.
I think your points are well taken. However, Greg, your comments, have you talked to legal? Have you talked to Merle to see what the process would be?
What process?
What you just discussed, okay? The legality of flying different flags. If somebody said, how come you're not flying mine? You're flying the other one. Have you checked with her? Have you checked with legal?
No, but I'm just saying that if she were involved, that probably would mean there would be some kind of litigation.
Well, wouldn't you ask her?
Well, what I have done is research the issue, and that's what the issue says. Viewpoint discrimination is what could be brought against the town.
But she's our legal. Why wouldn't you ask her?
Oh, we can ask her, but I still think, Steve, that it would invite others to say, why can't we fly our flag?
I understand that. I've had discussion with Heidi. I understand her point. Okay? I think what we need to do here is we need to revisit this. We need to make a decision, have an application and a permitting process. You all are elected. You are our people to make a town decision. What flags you want to fly to abide by our welcoming community, whether it be gay, whether it be straight, whether it be a bear, I don't give a damn. Okay? You to make the decision of, and I understand, well, we may just fly the state flag and the American flag, and if I was behind the select board, I may have that same opinion to a degree. Get a permitting process, talk to legal, say, this is what we may look at. Do it on a one-on-one basis. Don't get yourself involved in special interest groups. Have a process. That's what I would recommend.
Yes, in the back.
Again, I am Virginia Delahaye, and I did make the request that was brought up on April 15th. And I have returned with a proposal that addressed some of the concerns that you've brought up. My aim is to suggest a more inclusive and consistent way for our town to recognize the rich heritage and cultural diversity that strengthens our nation, our state of Vermont, and right here in Manchester. My proposal suggests amending our town's flag policy to allow for the temporary display of flags that correspond to state-recognized heritage months. This would provide a clear and objective framework for acknowledging the diverse identities within our community, including important periods like Black History Month, Women's History Month, Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, LGBTQ+ Pride Month, Hispanic Latino Heritage Month, and Native American Heritage Month. Recognizing these months through flag displays at designated locations such as Town Hall, Town Green, Rec Park would demonstrate Manchester's commitment to inclusivity and send a welcoming message to all our residents. It's about acknowledging the heritage and current identities of the many different groups that make Manchester the vibrant community that it is. Furthermore, a visible commitment to inclusivity can also encourage visitors and tourism to Manchester. Many people actively seek out destinations where they feel welcomed and respected. And a policy that celebrates diversity can enhance our town's reputation as a forward-thinking and accepting place. I've also gathered a petition signed by many registered voters in Manchester who support the flag being flown during Pride Month and are asking you to reconsider the prior decision that was made on April 15th. This shows the significant community desire for a more inclusive flag policy. By adopting the revised policy, Manchester can align itself with state values, establish a clear and fair process for commemorative flag displays, and most importantly, visibly celebrate the diverse fabric of our own community. This visibility not only benefits the residents, but also contributes to that positive image that can attract visitors who value inclusivity, thereby supporting our local economy. I'm now going to give you the proposal that I wrote up and also the petition with the signatures.
Signatures, was it?
Thank you. Next speaker, Bill Dronsel.
I think you're on the right track to limiting the flags to the American flag and the state flag under which we all live. And if we look at what they stand for, it includes all the characteristics that were just mentioned earlier. I would think it would be difficult for this board to get involved and having to make a decision on every potential flag that comes before you and represents a different group. Our lives and our success here is living together and maybe not recognizing all our differences, but just recognizing each other as human beings who we all care about and living together in the best way possible. I get concerned a little bit when we start focusing on identities that distinguish us, or that distinguish different groups, rather than focusing on our togetherness. And I think flying our state flag and our country flag is our togetherness, and that's how we should live, should focus on displaying and living. We all have the right on our property, private property, to speak our piece and do what we need to do. But I think it is not the best way to proceed to achieve the goals of diversity and equity and living together and helping each other out by trying to emphasize separateness and putting it out there and forcing other people as a whole to participate, maybe when and recognize when maybe they don't see the issues the same way. And we'll get better understanding, I think, if we just move together without broadcasting that separateness. That's a thought. Oops, going the wrong way.
Yes.
So my name is Sandra Marsh Kaufman, and I live in Manchester. And I have a number of things. One, I was here at the meeting on April 15th, rather surprised that I didn't know anything about the flag policy. I thought I was going to come in and just say, oh, that's nice, you're going to agree to do this. And when I read what the existing flag policy was at that time, I became very angry, which is why you could see petitions with water all over them, because I was out in the rain collecting signatures to ask you to reconsider this. I understand that it would make sense to only do the American flag and the state flag and a municipal flag. But at the time this request came in, the petition to fly the pride flag, it really seemed to me, and in fact, I even started that discussion by saying, we have received an application which seems to fit in with what our current policy is. So I would say, just out of fairness, that if you want to change the flag policy, you might consider doing it on July 1st, and on June 1st through the month, fly the pride flag. Right now, we're in a position where Vermont is getting a lot of negative press with what's going on with ICE and the detentions and everything. And in Vermont, we're having a lot of problems right now with negative press, and to not show a welcoming, to not show that we're welcoming, especially when you have a group of people here who want to be welcomed. They live here, living in a place and feeling welcome are not the same thing. And I think there's a group of people here who will support what I'm saying. And, you know, Ivan, you just spoke about we live within the confines of what the federal government said. My fear is in 2 years, it'll be illegal, and it won't be a choice for Manchester to fly this flag. And I would hate to think that we would pass up the opportunity at this one time to, if it's only one time, to show the support for this community and fly the flag for the month of June.
Somebody else want to speak to this? Again, I want to reiterate that the proposal before us is to step back to what we had in place, what we put in place at our last consideration of this a year ago. One of your comments relative to changing the flag policy to take that step.
So if I may, that, when we were in that marathon meeting a year ago, the motion, because I made it, I remember specifically, was that we would specify that until we had a proper, I think I used the word proper, and someone in the audience, and I believe it was Bill, said, don't use the word proper. Use a flag policy, had a flag policy in place. That was what we agreed to, and it was just the three of us. It was Greg, Ivan, and myself. So the policy a year ago was in fact that it wasn't until a policy was approved, which happened in a subsequent meeting, which is the one that applied at the beginning of the previous meeting. I wanted to actually respond. You mentioned, Scoffman, you said something very specific that is incredibly important. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it's the Youth Risk Behavior Survey that's done in our schools every year. And it's pretty much a full assessment of all kids at all levels. And it's asking them how they feel about themselves, or how they feel, how they fit in, how they, whether they're stressed, what are their backgrounds and behaviors, and how are they feeling about themselves as an individual. And in 2023, so this was 2 years ago, 49% of LGBTQIA plus middle and high school students in Vermont said that they had made a suicide plan in the last 12 months. I'll repeat that. 49% of LGBTQIA plus middle and high school students in Vermont said they had made a suicide plan in the last 12 months. And the kicker was the reason why the group that 49% was children who did not feel that their community welcomed them. Of children who lived in communities that felt that their community welcomed them and they were a part of their community, that number went from 49% to 16%. That's a huge amount of children who do not feel like they're part of this community. And as part of that long meeting, I did mention that when I grew up here and I went to MEMS and I went to BBA, I didn't see places in the community or at my school that made me feel like I wasn't just the odd man out. I didn't see the supports that I necessarily needed. And that didn't stop when I left MEMS. And this is some difficult things, and I did not mention these at the last meeting. 4 days before my husband was scheduled to leave for basic training at the age of 30 to join the military because he believes in our country, and he felt the ability that he could serve after Don't Ask, Don't Tell was overturned. We went for a run through the center of town, and we were called faggots in front of Mac's convenience store. Standing on the roundabout for an event, I don't remember what it was. Cars going by saying, "Look at the fags." When I ran for select board last year, I received several threats to myself and my family. My children have been mocked. They have been accused of things I won't even repeat. I had a drone outside of my window days before the election. I'm just one person, and I've lived here almost my entire life. Like you, I'm an 11th generation Manchester resident. And if I grew up in this community and I did not feel like I was human enough to be recognized by my community, but I was able to see that, you know what? This town office where my dad worked had the pride flag just for a few days out here on this pole. The amount of anguish that that would have saved me is astronomical. And I'm thankful that we live in a town that, you know, we did pass, and I wasn't on board then, but we did pass the statement of inclusion. And before I came here tonight, I went to our website and I can't find it on the website. And then I walked the hall and I don't see it anywhere. So if you moved here in the last few years and, you know, we're looking for that statement of inclusion because we're not willing to put up a flag, I don't know where you'd find it. And, you know, this isn't just about a flagpole. It's about whether we're willing to lead. It's not just about policy. It's about fear. And, you know, I understand there's fear on both sides to what could possibly happen, but if we have a policy that clearly states based on these things, and if we amend it and say, let's, you know, to someone's point, I forget who it was, who said, here are the 6 nationally or state recognized flags. Leave it at that. So if someone comes up with, you know, a flag that doesn't fall into those guidelines, we say no. I also say that, you know, there are flags, I was just thinking, this is the 250th anniversary, that there's going to be a 250th celebration. So if the folks who are putting that together wanted to put up a bicentennial flag or something like that, we're not allowed, we wouldn't allow that. POW MIA flag, we wouldn't allow that. And I think that's how we're simply making it, oh, we're not comfortable making these decisions and playing out a clear visioned policy that says these are what we're going to accept. And if it doesn't fall into these guidelines, we'll say no. It's just easier to say just the American flag and the Vermont flag. And I think while I respect the fact that the American flag stands for all Americans, it stands for freedom. It wasn't enough for the 49% of these kiddos who are questioning their life. And I think we can do more. And I don't think it's beyond the question to show that support to the LGBTQ plus community and others. I don't think it's that difficult. So I thank Virginia for putting the effort in, and you for bringing in the signatures. I don't know whether they're tears or raindrops, but.
Sorry, I just want to point out the Pride Proclamation is on our website under documents of the Office of the Town Manager.
The search doesn't show it though. And the Pride Proclamation actually, as I was actually looking for the statement of inclusion.
Okay, the Pride Proclamation is on.
Yeah. But the statement of inclusion is.
Vlad Ivanov.
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to thank Bill for what he said, and I couldn't agree more. If we don't feel that the American flag embodies all of us as a community, there's other countries to go to. Canada, I believe, is recruiting. And then in terms of what Jonathan said about the survey, which I've never seen, but I believe there's such survey, we need to stop teaching our kids hate. So I just want to thank the board for discussing the topic and Bill's comments, which I agree with. Thank you all.
Yeah. I didn't plan on relitigating this again, but I do want to take issue with the characterization that the board is choosing to take the easy route because none of this has been easy. And I just want that to be known that that is definitely.
We can't hear you, Heidi.
I didn't think we were going to relitigate this, but I did want to make the point that Jonathan said that we're trying to take the easy route and none of this has been easy. And so I just wanted to say that this is not what we're doing to try to make it easy on anyone.
I think one of the difficulties even in John's very powerful message, was that we may want to fly in the correct term is bicentennial flag. 250th, you remember that, Steve?
I stuck with bicentennial.
They're in the office.
We got plenty.
Yeah. Steve was in charge of our celebration of the town's 250th anniversary, which was quite some time ago. Anyways, if we wanted to fly that, this wouldn't allow it. If we wanted to fly MIA POW, this wouldn't allow it. But I would like to also suggest that the other proposal that we just received wouldn't allow that either. And it wouldn't allow either of those flags because they're not commemorative flags recognizing state observed heritage months. One of the problem with the heritage months, I mean, 30 days is a long time. And if we observe the heritage months, it would preclude having the polls available for something else. And of course, this policy as suggested would preclude that anyways. It would just include the heritage months. These are some of the difficulties. How do you create the right parameters that would allow one thing but disallow something else? And I mean, this is a reasonable approach to allow the commemorative flags recognizing state observed heritage months. Those are also congressionally observed heritage months. But is that the answer? And is the next group going to come in and say, well, you know, you allow this, but you don't allow me. And I am really, my brother disappeared in Vietnam, and I think we need to recognize that. And I know people that disappeared in Vietnam, and everybody that grew up in Manchester knows Jimmy Dub Dooley. And to me, that's a legitimate request under the policy that we have in place right now as well. But again, it displays that we can't possibly list the appropriate flags without listing the inappropriate flags, and I don't know what they are. I mean, I can think of a few, but and it gets back to what Greg was saying. How do you allow this but not allow that under the threat of litigation? Every state, every municipality, every city across the country has dealt with this, and they've dealt with this in different ways. But there are a lot of them that have taken the approach that has been suggested in the amendments to flag policy, simply because it's so hard to differentiate between what is good and what is evil, depending on who you are. And if we're completely inclusive, I grew up with a bunch of rednecks that love to shoot guns. I mean, a lot of people find that offensive. And I understand that. I don't, because that's my culture. In high school, we all drove pickup trucks and we had a gun in the gun rack, and nobody questioned it. It's a different world now. And it's hard to be inclusive in a defined way without being exclusive, unless we simplify and go back to what's being proposed.
Mr. Chairman, I also want to point out that having a policy that allows for anything other than what if you limit it to these, you're in government speech territory. I want to read, when we cited the case of Shurtleff v. Boston last year, when we adopted our old policy, or the policy that's currently in place. And I just want to go over what the points were there. The landmark Supreme Court case addressed the situation where Boston refused to allow a Christian flag to be flown on a flagpole where other groups were permitted to fly their flags. The court ruled that Boston's actions constituted viewpoint discrimination violating the First Amendment. Government speech versus private speech is the next header here. The court's decision in Shurtleff v. Boston distinguished between government speech, where the government is expressing its own message, and private speech, where the government is merely providing a forum for private expression, as would any policy that allows for other flags than we're talking about. If the government is providing a forum for private speech, they cannot discriminate against particular viewpoints. And therefore, if you have a policy that says you can't put up certain flags, or I think in trying to find, flags shall not be displayed in a manner that could be construed as offensive, disrespectful, or discriminatory. That goes against the court decision right there. So I'm going to finish the point. Well, that's it for now. Go ahead. Yeah, you come up to so people can hear you.
3 minutes.
So that last point that last bullet that you read, from the one that I just provided, was directly from the current flag policy.
No, I know. And that's why the
Yeah.
current flag policy actually turns out probably to be against that Supreme Court decision.
And that was my follow-up question really was, I was around for the last discussion last year when it came up, and it was decided we couldn't have the pride flag because there wasn't a policy and you didn't want to open those doors, right? And I'm just curious, I know that my request was the first, and I'm curious what flags you would have approved under that policy. And the 5 of you were the ones that decided on that policy and signed it. And I'm curious, I see hands, yes.
4 people just signed it.
Well, I think there was a problem with how the meeting last, or 2 weeks ago, we kind of combined 2 agenda items.
Right.
And so I think that really muddied the waters for me. And I think I don't think that they should have been joined together. And I think that was, it made it a little bit unclear and a little bit uncertain. And I feel badly about that because that might have confused the issue. And I don't think it was anyone's fault, but it made it a little less clear. And we could have dealt with that better.
I take responsibility for that as the chair. I also take responsibility that we have 2 minutes left in our meeting. And under the rules of our meeting, unless I can get a motion to extend the meeting, the meeting would end.
I'd like to make a motion to extend.
Okay. Well, okay.
Should we call the question instead of extending the meeting?
And does anyone else want to speak? Because I just think this is the time if anyone else wants to speak. We want to shut it down.
I had one final thing I would like to say. So if you need to.
We have a motion to extend the meeting. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, and that's
My last,
unanimous.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
My last request then would just be to really consider my prior request under the flag policy that is in place right now.
I would recommend too that we do post the inclusion proclamation that we had passed and make sure that that's visible.
Could
On the website. Well, I think should be on the website. I think it should be in town hall, just as Jonathan.
Could there be a place for it in our new park that is got to be finished? Or the updated park near the bridge?
Well, I'd be careful again. Maybe we can, I think, because it's a proclamation. Well, we could do that. I don't know. We probably could.
Let's find a place.
I don't know if it's comes into the same category, but.
Yeah. It's a nice message.
Okay, we extended the meeting. There's an opportunity for people to speak. Steve?
What are you talking about? I'm confused. Proclamation, what?
There was an inclusion proclamation that was signed about 3 years ago that kind of covers a lot of language around the town not accepting discrimination of any kind. And it's, I think, a really nice thing that should be displayed somewhere where people can see it and on the website. That's all.
A nice plaque.
Great.
I can assure you that document has been recorded in the Manchester Land Records. I'm happy to provide Katie with a copy of it tomorrow. I'm sure we have an extra frame somewhere in the building that can be put up as soon as tomorrow morning. We open at 8 a.m. I'm happy to put it on my agenda. It'll be posted by 8:05 tomorrow morning.
I think that's it.
Right.
But speaking to the issue at hand, the flag policy itself and the proposed change. Yes, Wilbur.
It seems to be an issue that is, has a lot of emotion here and is difficult. I think that Greg's discussions on it might warrant, and Steve's also, that you ask Meryl for some direction and some guidance.
I mean, we've seen a lot of litigation as surrounding this. I don't think that it wouldn't be us litigating. It would be other people litigating against the town for not displaying. a flag.
Usually the opinion that you get from your attorney.
But sorry, you're not a lawyer. So if she said that, great, but maybe it would be worthwhile getting her opinion.
I think we did the first time around.
We did.
Yeah, we did. We
And
spoke with her.
the opinion that you get is, there's a lot of court records on this. You, anytime you do anything, you open yourself up to litigation, and if you get litigated, we're more than happy to defend you. Because that's what they do.
I'd like to make a motion that we amend the policy to be what Greg read earlier in the meeting, to include state, federal, and municipal flags only.
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded. We've discussed it at length. I'll call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
And that's 4-1. And it is the new policy. On the question as to whether we would reconsider based on the fact that there was a different policy in place when that request came in mid-April, we acted on that. I mean, I say the board acted on that, and the request was denied under the policy that existed at the time. So I suspect the decision would stand.
Can I speak again?
You may.
I mean, I know it's already out of time. I know that you voted against it. But I would just like to reiterate, maybe you could make your new policy effective July 1st and fly the pride flag this year. And then you're done. I think that you saw people,
I think we illustrated why that would be a problem.
it could be a problem.
Our job is to make sure that that eventuality hopefully does not happen by doing what you're suggesting.
Why had a
It
week?
has nothing to do with whether or not I think everybody here is in agreement with the community that or supports the community, but I think that the difference is what we're charged to do is in conflict what a group wants us to do and is not something that would be in the best interest of the town based on the position I'm in.
I just find it.
I'll go get skewered tomorrow, in social media.
Don't make your decisions on whether or not you're skewered on
No.
social media.
Thing is that I'm doing my job. Okay, I'm not, it isn't, nothing I can say in support of the community, can make me change my mind. about what I have to do as a select board. That's my opinion. I mean, I'm talking for myself. Jonathan talked at length for himself, so I'm gonna tell you where I'm coming from.
I think Jonathan spoke on behalf of a group of people.
Yeah, and I'm speaking on.
I think
behalf of-
he spoke on behalf.
On my behalf as to what I view my responsibility is to the town.
I just think he spoke on behalf of a community that is constantly under threat. And especially now, and you had an opportunity. Personally, I think you put it 2 years in a row.
We're looking for other ways that won't invite litigation to support that community.
Okay, we took an action. Katie, do we have a signature page for,
No, you just.
I just
sign
have the front.
policy.
Just I want to sign the,
Yes.
on the front of the page?
Yeah.
There's not a lot of room.
No, he didn't leave a signature line.
Okay,
Or you can sign the back and I can,
well, there's room on the back.
yeah, you can sign the back. And I can print it up nicer.
Does he have to sign it and sit down?
It doesn't have to.
Yeah. There's an arm up in the back.
Yes.
Just a point of clarification, so I know there was an issue earlier this year when a flag was flown on municipal property without actually having gone through the process for getting acceptance. What happens when if that happens again?
The same thing that happened that time, the flag was removed.
After the holiday?
No, it was removed
soon as we were made aware of
immediately.
it.
That group knows not to do that again, actually.
That was by proclamation too, by the way. So
It didn't go through the flag policy.
it was a previous.
Okay,
proclamation.
well,
Yeah, we got it.
we got to move on. So getting back to the agenda, I think all that's left is other business.
I have 200 free pride flags. And we're planning a circle of visibility on the roundabout on June 15th at noon to Sunday, the day after the Bennington Pride. They will be distributed at the library and also at the Manchester Business Association. And I encourage everyone to take them, display them, and if you so choose, I ask that you make a donation to P-Flag Dorset on for the flag.
P-Flag Dorset?
Mhm.
Okay, is there any other? Oh, there it is.
Okay, you're at the end of the agenda.
Yeah, there was an executive session mentioned, but I think that,
Scott said nothing.
I think that was if you guys wanted to, at this time, delve into the,
RFPs.
Yeah.
RFP.
okay,
Yes,
okay.
I believe
All right.
so.
Yeah, all right.
Make the motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion to adjourn in a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Our next meeting, Katie, is when?
May. Yes, at 7 PM.
May 17th at 7 PM.
That's a Saturday.
May
Oh, no, not May 17th.
22nd?
20th?
May 20th.
May 20th.